Well, folks, the magic is gone for Kamala Harris, and the current polling is showing it. Become a Daily Wire Plus member today. Get instant access to unparalleled election coverage from the most trusted voices in conservative media. Make sure to join us on election night for the best live coverage and insights as the polls close from the entire DW team. Do not miss a single moment of this historic race with Daily Wire Plus as your election headquarters. Head on over to dailywire.com/subscribe and join the fight right now. Well, about a month ago, Kamala Harris was leading by 5 percentage points in the NBC News national poll. Today, they are dead tied, 48-48. That is a 5-point shift in favor of President Trump since just 1 month ago. So what exactly happened here? Was it that Donald Trump suddenly started overperforming? Did he radically change his campaign? The answer there, of course, is no. Donald Trump is perfectly consistent. He's been campaigning in the same fashion today that he was like 10 years ago at this point. So what exactly changed? The answer is the brat wore off. The air is out of the balloon. The facade is crumbling in Kamala Harris land. According to that NBC poll, the impression of candidates, Trump, 43% positive, negative 51%. Harris, positive 43%, same exact number as Donald Trump, negative 49%. That is a dramatic shift. Last month, Trump was at 40% positive, and Harris was at 48% positive and 45% negative. So it's a 5-point drop in her favorables since just last month. Biden's job approval rating, by the way, 43%. Trump's retrospective job approval rating, I mean, what do people think of his first presidency? 48%, which is higher than any poll when he was actually president of the United States. When it comes to policies, Biden policies, impact on your family, helping 25%, hurting 45%. Trump policies, impact on your family, helped 44%, hurt 31%. How about that gender gap? Well, according to the brand new NBC News poll, men are breaking 56-40 for Donald Trump. I think that's an underestimate, by the way. Women are breaking 55-41 for Kamala Harris, which, by the way, is not nearly as much of a gender gap as Democrats, I think, are expecting from women. They are hoping for a 60-40 break, not a 55-41 break. That looks very much in line with what Joe Biden did in 2020, or what Hillary Clinton, for that matter, did in 2016. These poll numbers are quite bad for Kamala Harris, and you can see that the panic is beginning to set in. Harry Enten at CNN, he says there are a lot of warning signs. The klaxons are going off right now.
The GOP leads by a point in party identification right now. The average when the Republican Party loses is the Democrats ahead by 8. When the Republican Party wins, the average party ID advantage for Democrats is 3. Republicans right now, Manu, are doing even better than the average when they win. If there's one little nugget that I think Republicans are really hopeful for, it's this party ID and this party registration data. It really points in a good direction for them and for Donald Trump.
Wow. Meanwhile, Martha Raddatz over at NBC News, she says that the polling shows that Americans actually believe the economy is getting worse. Okay, now, this is bewildering to the media. They do not understand how this could possibly be. They don't understand how people can believe the economy is getting worse when obviously inflation is down from what it was, when unemployment is kind of stagnating. It's not radically increasing at this point. The answer, of course, is because of the embedded cost of the Biden administration. You cannot go to the grocery store now and not compare it to what it was 4 years ago. There's no way to do it. It is so much more expensive just to do the daily things in life than it was 4 years ago. And people do not believe that the mild wage increases that they have seen over the course of the Biden administration finally starting to break even with regard to some aspects of inflation, that doesn't make up for 4 years of complete stagnation. Here's Martha Raddatz at ABC News lamenting this fact.
One likely drag on the Harris-Walz ticket, despite many positive economic signs, some 59% of Americans say they believe the economy is getting worse, compared to just 23% who say it's getting better, with more Americans trusting Trump to handle the economy if he wins a second term.
So as it turns out, Americans trust Trump on the economy. They don't just trust Trump on the economy. They trust Trump on foreign policy. According to the Wall Street Journal, Trump leads Harris among swing state voters 50-39 on who is best able to handle Russia's war in Ukraine, and has a wider advantage 48-33 on who is best suited to handle the Israel-Hamas war. They are right about this, obviously. Well, there's a reason that Americans trust Trump on foreign policy and the economy more, and there's also a reason why you shouldn't trust the big cell phone carriers when it comes to the deals they're making with you. Every year when Apple releases the new iPhone, the big carriers play those same old games. Sign your life away for the next few years and get that free iPhone. You don't have to fall for this. With Pure Talk, you can get great savings on the new iPhone 16, and you can still get an affordable data plan that fits your needs on America's most dependable 5G network. How would I know? Well, because I have that new iPhone 16 from Pure Talk. Bottom line, stop falling into the same traps and overpaying for data you're not going to use. With Pure Talk, for just $35 a month, get unlimited talk, text, and 15 gigs of data, plus mobile hotspot on America's most dependable 5G network. Here's the best part. When you switch your cell phone service to Pure Talk on a qualifying plan, you'll get 1 year free of Daily Wire Plus Insider. That's access to the full library of DW Plus movies, series, and documentaries, including Lady Ballers, What is a Woman, Mr. Bertram, and Run, Hide, Fight. Plus, uncensored, ad-free daily shows, 1 year free of our kids' platform, Benki, and your very own free Leftist Tears Tumblr. The only way you can get this special offer is by going to puretalk.com/Shapiro or call and mention my name. Stop overpaying for your cell phone plan. Go to puretalk.com/Shapiro today, switch to a qualifying plan, get 1 year free of Daily Wire Plus Insider. The Trump administration was the most peaceful foreign policy period of our lifetime. The Biden administration has been a complete bleep show, as everyone knows at this point. That is the polling in the swing states. Now remember, the national polling showing them even, that's including places like California and New York, which means that the swing states are probably trending pretty strongly for Donald Trump at this point. In fact, if you look at the latest polling data, of the last 7 polls taken in the state of Michigan, Donald Trump is either in the lead or tied in 6 of them. The only poll that has Kamala Harris ahead is the Wall Street Journal poll. That is from October 8th. And that poll only shows her up by 2. The margin of error in that poll is 4. Insider Advantage has Trump up by 2. The Hill has them tied. Quinnipiac has Trump up all the way by 4 in Michigan. Meanwhile, over in Pennsylvania, of the last 5 polls that have been taken, Trump is in the lead in 3 of them. If you go back a little further than that, if you go back to the last 7 polls taken, he's ahead in 5 of them. In fact, the only recent poll that shows Kamala Harris up at all is a New York Times Siena College poll that has Harris up 3 in Pennsylvania. But the TIPP poll has Trump up 1. Insider Advantage has Trump up 2. The Hill has Trump up 1. If you move on over to Wisconsin, every single poll for the last 3 has them tied. And the 2 before that, Trump is winning. So what you're looking at right there is a dead heat in Wisconsin, and the momentum is not with Kamala Harris. There's a reason that Eric Hovde, the Wisconsin Senate candidate, is now running dead even with Tammy Baldwin. He was down 6 to 8 points just a few weeks ago. Over in Nevada, which had largely been considered moving away from Trump and toward Kamala Harris, the latest Wall Street Journal poll has Donald Trump up 6 points in Nevada. That is outside the 4-point margin of error in Nevada. These are awful numbers for Kamala Harris. She has a world of hurt coming to her. The brat has worn off. And part of this is being exacerbated by the most delicious storyline in all of American politics, if you happen to be a person who is not of the left. And that is the pretty obvious fight that's happening between Team Biden and Team Harris. So you remember Joe Biden? Remember that guy? He's still the president of the United States? Somewhere? Sleepwalking around his beach house in Rehoboth? But you remember that guy. He was ousted. You remember that Kamala Harris basically came up behind him with a Garrett and did him like Carlo at the end of Godfather. And then he's still alive. So he's wandering around the landscape, and his entire case for not being ousted in favor of Kamala Harris is she's going to lose and I might still win. And the entire Democratic Party said, no, you're totally going to win. Maybe she'll lose. Maybe she'll win. Well, Joe Biden might not have been all that off the mark. As it turns out, Kamala Harris is a very, very bad candidate. And so Joe Biden has a very strong interest in watching Kamala Harris lose. Think of it this way. If Kamala Harris wins, then Joe Biden is just the transitional figure who moved out of the way to allow her to become president. His entire presidency is he was too senile to run for a second term. He didn't voluntarily move aside. They threw him off the back of the boat. That is not a legacy that Joe Biden wants. However, if Kamala Harris loses, then Joe Biden's legacy is he was unfairly persecuted by his own party for being too old despite his transformative accomplishments. And then they substituted in a vice president they had basically foisted upon him last minute in 2020. He gets to be the hero of that story. He was thrown out, he was victimized, and now, if they'd only listened to him, he might still be president. That is the case that Joe Biden wants to make, and we all know it. Apparently, according to Axios, that is not speculation, that is quite real. The relationship between Kamala Harris's team and Joe Biden's White House has been increasingly fraught in the final weeks before Election Day. 10 people familiar with the situation tell Axios. Biden's team wants Harris to win the election, but many senior Biden aides remain wounded by the president being pushed out of his re-elect bid and are still adjusting to being in a supporting role on the campaign trail. They're too much in their feelings, one close Harris ally said of the president's team, a sentiment shared even by some White House aides. Well, that is definitely a way to win over your opponents is by saying that they are too much in their feelings. Well done, Team Harris. By the way, again, Team Biden does not want her to win. They don't. Team Biden wants her to lose. Some on the Harris team say the top White House aides are not sufficiently coordinating Biden's messaging and schedule to align with what's best for the vice president's campaign. Well, herein lies the problem. In order for Kamala Harris to win, Kamala Harris needs to separate off from Joe Biden, not just by throwing him off the back of the vote, but also by carving up his policy. She has to say, listen, I was VP, I was in the room, I did my best. We got some of the things I wanted, but some of the things I wanted didn't happen because I'm just the VP, which means here are certain aspects of Joe Biden's policy I really don't like. A, B, and C. And if they listen to me, that never would have happened. Right? That's the campaign she actually has to run. But that's not a campaign that Joe Biden wants her to run. This is actually quite reminiscent of the 1968 presidential race. In the 1968 presidential race, LBJ decided that he did not want to run for a second term. It was kind of his third term since he had inherited JFK in 1963. So he decided he didn't want to run in 1968. And his Vice President Hubert Humphrey, was the person who won the primaries. Right? That was a very fraught primary season. Obviously, RFK ran for the nomination in that year. He ended up being assassinated. It was unlikely he was going to win the nomination anyway, just by the electoral vote count at that point. But Hubert Humphrey wanted to run a very different campaign from LBJ in 1968. There's an excellent book about this that's out right now. Highly worth the read. That book is called The Year That Broke Politics, Collusion and Chaos in the Presidential Election of 1968 by Luke Nichter. Terrific book. LBJ wanted his legacy upheld. And in order for Hubert Humphrey to earn his neutrality in the race, LBJ was going to have to get Hubert Humphrey to basically to essentially signal to everyone that he was on board with LBJ's program. So Humphrey, who was much more to the left than LBJ, really wanted to attack LBJ's program. But LBJ didn't want him to do that. And there was the worry by Hubert Humphrey's team that LBJ would then undercut Hubert Humphrey in his run for the presidency, which in fact did happen. LBJ was pretty openly coordinating with Richard Nixon, the Republican in that race, who he saw as a better representative of his Vietnam War policy than Hubert Humphrey in 1968. That is very similar to what's happening right now. Not that Joe Biden is calling up Donald Trump and they're getting together in the back room and figuring out a strategy, which is something that actually kind of happened between Richard Nixon and LBJ. But the animus between LBJ and Hubert Humphrey was very real. They had very different policy differences. This race looks a ton like 1968. 1968 was, kind of a fraught time. Well, if you're losing sleep like it's 1968, there is no reason for you to do that. The thing you're probably not getting enough of, sleep, because you're up all night worrying about the state of the world. Well, I've got a solution for you. It's called Helix. Now, I'm not one to endorse products lightly. Helix has seriously changed how we live in my household. They've got a whole lineup of mattresses, 20 different options to be exact. You've got the Luxe for those of you who feel like you're sleeping on a cloud, the Elite for when you want to take your sleep game to the next level, and even the Helix Plus for our friends who need a little extra support. Plus, you don't need a degree in mattressology to figure out which one is right for you. You just take their sleep quiz. I took it myself. They matched me with a medium firm mattress, which is great since I get back pain if the mattress is too soft. Get this, Helix delivers your personalized sleep solution right to your door. No hassle, no fuss, just pure comfort shipped straight to you. Plus, they are so confident in their product, they give you 100 nights to try it out. If that wasn't enough, there's a 10 to 15-year warranty. Talk about standing behind your product. So if you want to sleep as soundly as I do, head on over to helixsleep.com/Ben and take that sleep quiz. Plus, Helix is offering up to 20% off all mattress orders. Just go to helixsleep.com/Ben. That's helixsleep.com/Ben. With Helix Sleep, better sleep starts right now. And now, the same thing is sort of true of Biden-Harris. Not that Harris has wild policy differences from Biden, but she's more progressive than Biden, for sure. And she has to campaign as more moderate than Biden in some way. But if she separates off too far from him, then he's going to just grab her and he's going to wrap her up in a bear hug. And there's nothing she can do about it. And that's what he's been doing. And that's why Team Harris is so frustrated. Every time she goes out and she wants to separate off from Biden, he grabs her and smothers her and starts smelling her hair. And it's a real problem for the campaign. Quote, Biden gave an impromptu press conference in the White House briefing room Friday, just as Harris was about to do an event in Michigan, ensuring her event would get less TV coverage than it otherwise would have. Earlier in the week, Harris criticized Florida Governor Ron DeSantis for not taking her call about recent hurricanes, only for Biden to praise DeSantis soon after for being gracious and cooperative. Biden has been eager to boast about a robust jobs report, helping to end the strike by the Longshoremen's Union and other perceived victories recently. Harris has been trying to focus on voters' pocketbook concerns, including inflation. One person involved with Harris's campaign told Axios, quote, the White House is lacking someone in the room thinking first and foremost about how things would affect the campaign. Well, no bleep. You mean Team Biden doesn't care about Team Harris? Well, yeah. Why should they? Team Harris politically assassinated him. I mean, why exactly would he be sitting in the back room thinking, what's best for Kamala? What's best for Kamala? By the way, Joe Biden hates Kamala Harris. A fact worth noting, Joe Biden despises Kamala Harris ever since the 2020 race, in which Kamala Harris basically labeled Joe Biden both a racist and a... According to Axios, the tensions have been playing out on the staff level too. Harris's team has been trying to add staff to the VP's office to handle the bigger workload. It's been frustrated at the White House's pace in getting people detailed for that, according to two people familiar with the matter. The White House has been working to help Harris's team and has been frustrated by some of the rules about who can be detailed and when. Again, the White House is like, well, you didn't do anything as vice president before. Why are we detailing additional staff to you so you can campaign? Several Biden aides have joined Harris's campaign, but some feel like they've been labeled as disloyal by Biden's team for leaving or even considering it. A White House official told Axios, everyone from the president on down knows how important the election is. We always anticipated a number of staff would want to transition from the administration to the campaign for the final stretch. On Harris's campaign, there's also awkwardness between some who are on Biden's original campaign staff and Harris allies who've been installed in recent weeks. In the weeks after Harris became the Democratic nominee, there were squabbles about whether Biden's main surrogates on TV would continue in those roles or if new faces would emerge. Harris's team prevailed. Some on Harris's team are wary of the Biden campaign crew they are now working with. After all, Biden's team publicly argued Harris was less electable than Biden in the weeks after the president's disastrous debate in June. It was Deputy Campaign Manager Rob Flaherty who wrote in a letter, quote, at the end of the day, we'd switch to candidates who would, according to the polls, be less likely to win than Joe Biden, the only person ever to defeat Donald Trump. Meanwhile, White House spokesperson Andrew Bates told Axios President Biden endorsed Vice President Harris immediately after leaving the race, rejecting other approaches that would divide the party. But again, the tensions are quite real. The sore feelings are quite real. And this is a big, big problem for Kamala Harris. But the biggest problem is not Joe Biden. And Joe Biden is a ghost wandering around in this haunted White House. But the biggest problem is, in fact, Kamala Harris. As we all know, if Kamala Harris were a strong candidate, it turns out strong candidates unite. Weak candidates divide. Donald Trump is a strong candidate. He's united the Republican Party with all of its disparate factions, with all of its multitudinous errors. It is a united party behind Donald Trump because he is, in fact, a strong figure. Kamala Harris is a weak horse, and it is dividing the Democratic Party, and independents are quite alienated from Kamala Harris, whom they correctly see as a totally empty vessel. The latest example of Kamala Harris word salading over the weekend. She was speaking in Greenville, and here's how it went.
It is easy in these moments of crisis to question our faith, to sometimes lose our faith for a moment, because what we see is so hard to see that we lose faith or a vision of those things we cannot see but must know.
What in the world is she talking about? What does that even mean? She speaks like Ta-Nehisi Coates writes. Just these long sentences that lead nowhere, mix metaphors, and don't even make use of proper antecedents. It's wild. In fact, there's a full report out that Kamala Harris is now getting help to clean up her style in interviews after she can't explain how she differs from Joe Biden. Apparently, this report out from Mediaite suggests that Vice President Harris's team has been discussing ways to clean up her responses to questions this week about how she would differentiate herself from President Joe Biden, according to four people familiar with the discussions. This is NBC News reporting. Harris's answers, including one where she said she couldn't think of anything she'd do differently than Biden, quickly became fodder for her Republican opponent. The NBC News report further noted Democrats are working with Harris on several additional areas in which she could contrast her, quote, overall leadership style. The discussions within Harris's team have included how she should put more distance between her and Biden, the people familiar with the discussion said, as well as what that would entail in the final weeks of the 2024 race. Yeah, man, if at this point in the race, you're having to explain to the candidate why her answers suck, she's done. She's got again, she is a mess. And the problem is this, her default, if people actually default to her pre-2024 settings, it's like resetting an iPad or something. When you go back to factory settings on Kamala Harris, the factory settings on Kamala Harris are wild left crazy person. Those are the factory settings. And then you have a bunch of programming that was added by the Biden administration that was pseudo-moderation. And now when she tries to campaign as a moderate, everybody's like, well, you're not more moderate than Joe Biden. What are your actual principles? And then she says, my principles never change. Okay, so are we supposed to look at your factory settings? What exactly are we supposed to do here? Remember, her factory settings are crazed leftists. So today is Columbus Day. It is a celebration of Christopher Columbus, who essentially opened the Americas to European exploration, which, by the way, was a net positive for planet Earth. Okay? Without a doubt. Of course, terrible things happen in the course of any conquest. Terrible things happen in the course of any population movement. Also, very good thing that North America and South America had Western influence in them. And the tribes that predated them on the continent were, in general, quite barbaric. Many of them were engaged in precisely the same kinds of tribal warfare that people all over the planet are engaged in. This sort of attempt to whitewash everybody who's living on these relatively unpopulated continents. I say relatively because, of course, there was a population, but it was certainly not all that large. If you look at person per space in the United States, for example, on the North American continent, is a fairly sparsely populated continent. But the kind of attempt to paint the European West as uniquely evil, Kamala Harris does that kind of stuff. She has said she wants to get rid of Columbus Day in favor of Indigenous Peoples Day. Now, listen, that is an amazing statement. It really is. Are we truly to believe that Kamala Harris, the greatest beneficiary in American life of the existence of European colonization, truly, I mean, she's the vice president of the United States, which began as a European colony. Her up there saying that we shouldn't celebrate Christopher Columbus, that it's like the beneficiary of a penicillin vaccine saying that we should not celebrate the inventors of penicillin. Like that, it's a bizarre notion that she is pushing here. Well, Kamala Harris's leftism, that could keep you up at night, but you know what's really keeping you up late at night? It is the fact that the sheets that you have on your bed, they're not good. That's why I decked out my entire bed with bowl and branch. Now, I'm not usually one for changing with the seasons. These principles, they stay consistent year round. When it comes to bedding, that's another story. Starting with the Boll and Branch Signature Collection, their 100% organic cotton sheets are like the Constitution for your bed. Foundational, timeless, getting better with age. They start off buttery soft, and somehow they get even softer with every single wash. Plus, you can easily add their blankets, duvets, and quilts without making your bed feel heavy or hot. Trust me, a fall refresh with Boll and Branch will have your mind changed for good. Best of all, Boll and Branch gives you a 30-night worry-free guarantee with free shipping and returns on all U.S. orders of $100 or more. Let me tell you, when you're fighting the culture war day in and day out, good sleep is in fact crucial. Start getting your best sleep this fall with Boll and Branch. Enjoy 20% off plus free shipping on your first set of sheets at bollandbranch.com/Ben. That's Boll and Branch, BOLLAND, branch.com/Ben for 20% off and free shipping. Exclusions apply. See site for details. That is bollandbranch.com/Ben for 20% off and free shipping. Okay, so this is her back in 2019 saying that we should actually kill off Columbus Day in favor of Indigenous Peoples Day. You could even say that you have critiques for Christopher Columbus on Columbus Day. Of course, that's perfectly fine. No one's arguing that. But to say that instead you want to celebrate the people who were there before, who you would not even have known about, and many of whom were participating in, shall we say, inhumane practices well before Columbus ever discovered the New World, that is something else entirely. Here is Kamala Harris back in 2019. Again, this is her preset. Her preset is wild left.
Would you support efforts on a federal level to change Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day? And why does that matter so much?
Sure. Yeah. And why it matters is, to your very point, we have to remember history. And this question, I think, really is connected to the last question about our morals and our compass and our goals and our aspirations. Yeah. We have to remember our history. Uncomfortable, to your point about truths.
God, she's so awful. She was so awful in 2019. Fast forward a few years, we were told there was a brand new Kamala Harris. Not good. Not good, Bob.
It is an honor, of course, to be with you this week as we celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day, as we speak truth about our nation's history. Since 1934, every October, the United States has recognized the voyage of the European explorers who first landed on the shores of the Americas. But that is not the whole story. That has never been the whole story. Those explorers ushered in a wave of devastation for tribal nations, perpetrating violence, stealing land, and spreading disease. We must not shy away from this shameful past, and we must shed light on it and do everything we can to address the impact of the past on Native communities today.
And that was Kamala Harris in 2021. So the same as a candidate, same as vice president, and same today. She's not a moderate. She was never a moderate. And again, it seems weird to me that the vice president of the United States feels that way about the civilization that has allowed her to be the vice president of the United States. The biggest problem for Kamala Harris is that Kamala Harris exists as a human. That is the biggest problem for her. And there's no way to get around that, which is why she's hiding from the press. So Time magazine, which was desperately attempting to spin her into something amazing. She was on the cover of Time magazine just a couple of months ago as sort of the future. Well, they have an entire 17-minute piece titled, "What Kind of President Would Kamala Harris Be?" There's only one problem. Kamala Harris refused to do the interview. Quote, "When she does do interviews, she mostly favors local media, culture podcasts, or friendly talk shows. Harris declined repeated requests for an interview for this story. In contrast, Trump talked about his policy vision with a Time reporter for 90 minutes across 2 interviews. Biden spoke to Time at similar length before dropping out of the race." So I guess their strategy is to basement her. They're going to run the Joe Biden 2020 basement strategy, not in the middle of COVID, and with a person who's supposedly young and virile. That is the case. Listen, even her surrogates can't defend her at this point. Andy Beshear, who was once considered a vice presidential candidate, he was asked, how will Kamala Harris be different from Joe Biden? He can't answer that question because ain't nobody can answer that question. She cannot answer the most simple question in this campaign. Why are you running? Why? Other than just being there, like Chauncey Gardner, why are you running? Okay, and then the second question, how are you different from the guy who's currently there? Those are the 2 key questions of the campaign. She can't answer either of them, and neither can any of her surrogates. Here's Andy Beshear, the governor of Kentucky.
Do you think she will be different than Joe Biden? What do you think the difference is? She struggled on The View to say anything about anything different, that she would be different.
Well, of course she'll be different because we are all different individuals. But just look at the
policy-wise.
I mean, they're right there. Right, but President Biden's plans were about building a future economy that is happening right now. We're building the 2 biggest battery plants on planet Earth in Kentucky. We built the cleanest, greenest recycled paper mill the world's ever seen. Those are all through his policies. But hers are about right now. How do we help the American people that are struggling to pay the bills?
Okay, so that is a non-answer. Thanks for that, Andy. Well, folks, people like Andy Beshear, they're trying to pull the wool over your eyes. Well, so are some credit card companies. Probably the number one question I get from listeners is, how can I get in the conservative fight? Well, it's critical to know where your dollars are going. Some credit cards are funneling millions to left-wing causes and candidates, hoping you don't notice. Now you have a choice. Enter Coin, America's conservative credit card. Find them at COIGN.com. Here's what makes Coin great. With every single transaction, you advance conservative causes and charities at no cost to you. It's a great looking card you'll take pride in using. Bright red with We the People on the front. It works everywhere Visa is accepted. Comes with 100% US-based customer service and consumer protections. Coin empowers us to take back our country with every swipe. It's the only card worthy of your wallet. Start earning cash back while fighting the left-wing agenda today. Apply now at coin.com. That's COIGN.com. Be sure to select Daily Wire in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Terms apply. Go to coin.com/disclosures for full details. Every time you use your credit card, you may be giving money to people that you don't particularly agree with. You don't have to do that anymore. Apply now at coin.com. That's COIGN.com. And let them know that we sent you in their How Did You Hear About Us section. And the biggest problem in this race for Kamala Harris is Kamala Harris, but she's always been bad at every job she's ever taken. This is the thing about Kamala Harris. She keeps failing up. She was originally given a job because she was dating Willie Brown, who was then one of the big political movers and shakers in the state of California, while she was appointed to state-based commissions that paid her a very, very nice salary in the state of California. She never showed up. She didn't go to the meetings. Then, when she became a DA, she tried to challenge her own boss, Terrence Hallinan, for his job. And then when that failed, she moved over to a different segment of the Child Services Unit for the city attorneys. And then she had a performance review, according to DailyMail, over the weekend, and her ratings there stunk as well. On a scale of 1 to 5, Harris only got a 2 on whether she was thorough, helpful, and proactive, and only a 3 on whether she showed good judgment. She also got a 2 rating for recognizing deadlines, fast turnaround, and anticipating their needs. Apparently, she got a 1 for her failure to return phone calls and emails promptly. Not an amazing performance review, according to the UK Daily Mail. She's never been good. She's been an awful vice president. There's a reason that she was the lowest rated vice president in modern American history. There is nothing new here for Kamala Harris. She is a fail of a candidate, and she's a fail of a politician. And it turns out that in American politics, it is quite possible to fail up. What a great country this is. Meanwhile, her surrogates are failing as well. So as we mentioned last week, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer made a big boo-boo because she did a viral video, this bizarre sort of lesbian communion scene with a popular influencer named Liz Plank, where Plank was on her knees, and Gretchen Whitmer is feeding her a Dorito in a manner that is extraordinarily reminiscent of communion. And all the Catholics got very upset, as well they should, because it was pretty obviously meant to mock that. Now she came out and she apologized for that. The stunt, according to Mediaite, was apparently done to promote the 2022 CHIPS Act, which was signed by President Joe Biden to allow for $280 billion in spending on domestic research for STEM fields and semiconductors. Multiple Catholic organizations issued statements condemning the video because it appeared to mock the communion sacrament. Michigan's Catholic Conference issued a statement claiming Whitmer was mocking Catholicism. Paul Long, the organization's president and CEO, said, quote, "It's not just distasteful or strange. It is an all too familiar example of an elected official mocking religious persons and their practice." Whitmer then gave a statement. She said, "Over 25 years in public service, I would never do something to denigrate someone's faith." I don't believe you. She said, "My team has spoken to the Michigan Catholic Conference. What was supposed to be a video about the importance of the CHIPS Act to Michigan jobs has been construed as something it was never intended to be, and I apologize for that." So her surrogates are failing as well. That includes, of course, the bizarro world governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, who is, I'm sorry, he just gets weirder and weirder, Tim Walz. The attempt to turn Tim Walz into the apotheosis of masculinity to reach out to men, let's just say that that's not going very well. He's like a theater major playing a man. Here he was over the weekend going shooting. The way he is loading his shotgun, I do own a Mossberg 500. I will say I have never loaded a shotgun this way. This is a bizarre way to load a shotgun. He was supposed to be out grouse hunting or something. He did not actually achieve any actual game. But he went out there and awkwardly attempted to load his shotgun. And not amazing stuff here.
That's my theory. And it never fits quite right. Never fits quite right. Just not quite right. How do you give it back?
Governor, what kind of gun is it?
This is a Beretta A400. I bought it when I was shooting a lot of trap because it has a kind of their patented thing, a kickoff. So when you get old, it doesn't hurt your shoulder as much.
So Captain Masculinity over here is loading his shotgun while propping it against his crotch, for those who can't see, and then bragging about how the kick of the shotgun hurt his shoulder. Yeah, that's a strategy, man. That's a strategy. Well, this means that Kamala Harris is now in panic mode. So over the weekend, she released her medical records. The only case that is left to her is that she is younger than Donald Trump. It certainly is not her agenda. It's certainly not her coherent speech patterns. It is not her policy. It is that she is not 80. Right? Okay, fair enough. So she released a medical report that shows that she is in excellent health. A senior aide to the Democratic presidential nominee said the two-page statement, which includes details from a physical exam in April, is meant to underscore a point of contrast with Donald Trump, who at age 78 would be the oldest person to serve as president if elected this year. The statement from Colonel Joshua Simmons noted Harris exercises daily and is up to date on preventative screenings, including a colonoscopy and annual mammogram, and has undergone allergen immunotherapy for the past 3 years. She apparently uses Allegra to manage allergy symptoms. No actual coverage of her alcohol use, which may or may not include drinking giant bottles of rosé in the middle of the day. In any case, the idea here was supposed to be to draw a contrast with Donald Trump as unhealthy. There's only one problem with this particular angle from Kamala Harris. She still argues that Joe Biden is in perfect health. She's the vice president of the United States. He is senile. She has the actual constitutional requirement to invoke the 25th Amendment to oust her senile boss. They got rid of him in the race, but not in the presidency. And so she's sitting there watching Captain walks into Walz over here and drools into his oatmeal. She's watching that dude be president and doing nothing. So don't make me the case that she cares deeply about the health status of Donald Trump when the person she's leaving in office, a person she defenestrated from his own nomination, is in fact a senile dotard. That is a crazy, crazy thing. It's crazy. This is what they're left with. And so all of her surrogates have also entered complete panic mode. Well, Kamala Harris thinks she ought to get the job because apparently she is in fine fettle. She's in great health. But it turns out qualifications for jobs usually require more than that. And that's why when you're looking for somebody to fill your roles, you need ZipRecruiter. Whether it's the Oval Office or your local school board, finding the right person for your job is crucial. The same goes for businesses. Whether you're staffing a classroom, a construction site, even a toll booth, finding the right person matters. Now, no matter what kind of office you have, one thing is for certain. If you want the fastest way to find qualified candidates for it, you need ZipRecruiter. Today, you can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/dailywire. ZipRecruiter, they don't mess around. Their smart technology starts showing your job to qualified candidates immediately. It's like the free market of job hunting, efficient and effective. With ZipRecruiter, you can even invite top candidates to apply for your job, encouraging them to apply sooner. Want faster hiring for your office? Choose ZipRecruiter. See why 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the very first day. Go to this exclusive web address and try it for free. ZipRecruiter.com/dailywire. Again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/dailywire. ZipRecruiter is indeed the smartest way to hire. Go check them out again right now at ZipRecruiter.com/dailywire and give them a try. Also, Kamala Harris has raised over $1 billion since she entered the race in late July. She is the Theranos of political candidates. Even seasoned experts are saying Harris's fundraising is unlike anything we've ever seen. While the Democrats are raking in cash to push their radical agenda, the conservative movement is being outspent and silenced, but we are fighting back. At the Daily Wire, we're dedicated to preserving free speech, defending conservative values, exposing the truth the media won't show you. We've been fighting the culture wars with films like Am I Racist? Uncensored ad-free daily shows from the most trusted voices in conservative media, and hard-hitting reporting you're not going to find anywhere else. But to win, we need you with us. Join the fight right now. Go to dailywire.com/subscribe to become a member. Help us stand up against the $1 billion Kamala Harris machine. That's dailywire.com/subscribe. So the Democratic Party is, in fact, in freak-out mode. This is why James Carville is relegated to calling Donald Trump a Nazi. This is always the last resort of Democratic freak-out, is that you have to vote against Donald Trump because he's Hitler with 7 mustaches. And it's pathetic. It's ridiculous. James Carville, and this guy used to be the practical Democrat. When he is relegated to saying that Kamala Harris basically needs to call Donald Trump a Nazi, they're done. They got to, honest to God, like, if I had to put money on the election today, I put it on Donald Trump. Fairly heavy.
When I said that, I didn't know that he was going to schedule a rally at Madison Square Garden to mimic the Nazi rally of 10 February 1939. So we have, they're telling you. And by the way, if they win, they're going to correctly say, we told you in the election what we were going to do, and you voted for us. You have green-lighted the whole thing.
Yeah, again, this is wild rhetoric, and of course they have to do this. Of course they do. Meanwhile, Tim Walz has been relegated to saying that free speech is bad. Now, this has been his argument for quite a while, that free speech is somehow a problem. If people say things he doesn't like, Tim Walz ought to be able to outlaw it. Don't worry. The real fascist is Donald Trump. Here was Tim Walz over the weekend claiming there is no free speech guarantee for misinformation or hate speech, which is a lie. It is not true. Of course there is. Of course there is.
Who gets to decide on the issue of what misinformation is?
Look, the First Amendment is foundational. It's something I spent my whole life, the vice president, and I think most Americans are clear on this. The point being on this, we're seeing censorship coming in the form of book bannings in different places. We're seeing it attempts in schools. The issue on this is the hate speech and the protected hate speech. Speech that's aimed at creating violence, speech that's aimed at threats to individuals. And that's what we're talking about in this. And the decision on that, society decides on a lot of this. The idea of someone going on and threatening someone's life or a child's life online, I don't think any of your viewers think that is something that should be acceptable.
Oh, my goodness. They have troubles. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is winning, according to the polls, an outsized share of the black male vote. The polls right now are showing him winning about 15% of the black vote. If that happens in this election is over. He wins. It really is that simple. And you're starting to see a freak out on the part of, again, the Harris surrogates over this. James Clyburn, who's the person who elevated Joe Biden to the presidency over, for example, Bernie Sanders, he appeared on CNN over the weekend trying to convince young black men to vote for Kamala Harris by saying that Donald Trump is Jim Crow 2.0. This does not wash. It is not going to work. It is unbelievably paternalistic. If you truly believe that Donald Trump is somehow Jim Crow 2.0, I'm sorry, you got to screw loose.
We will expect Project 2025 to be a full-blown policy in his administration. And what would that policy be? I described it on the first night of our national convention, and I've been describing it that way ever since. It will be Jim Crow 2.0.
Okay, no, it won't. Meanwhile, Jonathan Capehart, over at the Washington Post and MSNBC, He was trying to explain why Barack Obama, last week, we talked about it on the show, went out campaigning and then said that young black men aren't voting for Kamala Harris because she's a woman and they're sexist. He's trying to explain that Barack Obama wasn't trying to talk down to black men. He clearly was, by the way. He was just trying to get across a message. What, by talking down to black men?
In the entirety of these 15-minute remarks, he talks about how, the change that folks want doesn't come quickly because that's not how things work. And he walked through what happened during his presidency, what happened during other presidencies. And so, folks who feel like the former president was lecturing them or talking down to them or singling them out, I understand where that's coming from, but that's not what he's doing. Remember, President Obama is somebody who rarely speaks out, but when he does, it is with intention, and he means what he says, and he's trying to get across a message. And the fact that it's rare when he speaks, people listen to what he says.
And do they, though? We will find out in very short order. Now, really, what is this election about in the end? I think what this election is about in the end is a theme that I've talked about a lot here, lions versus scavengers. There are people who wish to achieve in America, who wish to see an America where you can achieve, where achievement is actually treasured and prized. There are much premises to that basic worldview, but lions generally have an approach toward the world, and that is, it's my job to do my duty, to support my family, to take care of my family, to go out and innovate, to explore the world and make it a better place. Right? That's kind of the lion mentality. Scavenger mentality is every failing I have is the fault of the system, and the system needs to be torn down. And if you wanted to telescope this into sort of one incredibly colorful example, it happened over the course of this weekend with SpaceX. So Elon Musk, when he is not running Twitter and tweeting controversial things, Elon Musk happens to be the signal entrepreneur of our time. He's a person who's been successful in a wide variety of enterprises, all of which have made the world a significantly better place. Tesla has made the world a better place with its electric vehicles. They're awesome. SpaceX is doing unbelievable work in getting us to other planets, and also, obviously, launching things like Starlink, which is a transformative technology that allows the entire world to be wired up to the extent that basically Ukraine probably would have lost the war against Russia in the first couple of weeks if it had not been for Starlink. And Elon Musk is also, obviously, the person who bought X, which has opened up free speech spaces. So over the weekend, SpaceX did something truly unbelievable. And this is just cool stuff. I'm sorry, if you believe in humanity, if you believe that human beings are an incredibly cool species, and when we put our minds to things in innovative and entrepreneurial ways, we can do unbelievable stuff, you just got to be impressed by this. It is so damned cool. So over the weekend, the Falcon Super Heavy booster, which is the largest booster ever launched, it's like twice the size of Saturn V. It was launched into the air. The goal was, and this is something that Elon's been working on for a while, is to be able to use the first stage boosters again. So typically speaking, after you launch a rocket, there's a separation between some of the boosters that are on the back end of the rocket, and then it's really only the tip of the rocket that makes it, which is the payload, that makes it into space. And that's where you release all the satellites, for example. That's what goes into orbit. Okay, but the early stage boosters, which are the things that are filled with the fuel that gets the thing to space, those drop off and they fall back down to Earth. And for decades, they fell back down into the ocean. Maybe they were salvaged, maybe they weren't. Very, very expensive, because it meant you basically had to build de novo every single time you want to make a rocket. So Elon and SpaceX decided they were going to try to make it so that these first stage boosters were able to return to their site of origin and then to be reused, which is incredibly cost effective, way more cost effective than what was happening making these things fresh. So over the weekend, they launched this Falcon Super Heavy booster. Okay, this thing weighs 250 tons. Okay, 250 tons. It is a very, very, very large rocket. And this 250-ton rocket goes up in the air, and then it is brought back down into what is called the Mechazilla. You know, one of the things that's fun about Elon is that he names all of his stuff cool things that kids would like. So my son is super into this. My 8-year-old, he loved this. He watched this like 10 times yesterday. So the idea is that the super heavy booster is going to come down and is going to be caught by the Mechazilla, which is essentially a tower that has horizontal chopsticks attached to it, and they catch the super heavy booster. Okay, so they have to take this thing that is dropping at half the speed of sound. They have to slow it down. It's 20 stories high, by the way. They have to slow it down. They have to bring it in at an angle sufficient so that the problem with just having it land is that it's so heavy it'll fall over. So instead, they construct this tower that has chopsticks attached to it. The chopsticks are going to catch it directly out of the air. Okay, here's what this looks like. So you can see it's burning and it's hovering. They make the rocket hover. It's so damn cool.
We can see those chopsticks now.
Okay, and it approaches the tower. It literally slows down in the air. The thing is 20 stories high. This is a building. Okay, and here come the chopsticks. The chopsticks are closing around it. That is so cool. And then it just stops there, right? And and it's caught, so it can be reused. Mechazilla has caught the super heavy. That is so freaking cool. It's so cool. Okay, so fair to say Elon is a lion. Okay, but we have a society made up of scavengers. And so you have DOJ coming after SpaceX. Okay, that's been going on for a while here. Since August of 2023, the Justice Department has been suing SpaceX for discriminating against asylees and refugees in hiring. They weren't hiring enough people who were on temporary protected status or something. SpaceX failed to fairly consider applications submitted by asylees and refugees. They repeatedly rejected asylee and refugee applicants because of their citizenship status. SpaceX hired only U.S. citizens and lawful permanent residents from September 2018 to September 2020. These are the scavengers. Tear down SpaceX because they didn't hire enough people with temporary protected status. Illegal immigrants claiming asylum, some of them. That is the Biden DOJ. Absolute scavengers. Take the successful and tear them down. Make the world an actively worse place because you just don't like Elon Musk. And if you don't believe me, they're doing the same thing in California. According to Politico, California officials cite Elon Musk's politics in rejecting SpaceX launches. State officials cited Musk's antics in rejecting SpaceX's plan to launch more rockets off the central California coast. Quote, Elon Musk's tweet about the presidential election and spreading falsehoods about Hurricane Helene are endangering his ability to launch rockets off California's central coast. The California Coastal Commission on Thursday rejected the Air Force's plan to give SpaceX permission to launch up to 50 rockets a year from Vandenberg Air Force Base in Santa Barbara County. Commissioner Gretchen Newsom, no relationship to either Gavin Newsom or Gretchen Whitmer, which means that Tom Wolfe wrote this person's name. Elon Musk is hopping about the country, spewing and tweeting political falsehoods and attacking FEMA while claiming his desire to help the hurricane victims with free Starlink access to the internet. The agency's commissioners, appointed by the governor and legislative leaders, voted 6-4 to reject the Air Force's plan over concerns that all SpaceX launches would be considered military activity, shielding the company from having to acquire its own permits, even if military payloads aren't being carried. And again, they're relying on the fact that he did the mean tweets. These are the scavengers, man. They don't like the politics of the guy who's changing the world with some of the most incredible technology in human history because he does mean tweets. And so they're rejecting permits for him. This dude is radically redesigning incredible large swaths of American life, including, by the way, auto driving. If you've tried the new auto drive on Tesla, you basically don't have to drive anymore. You type in your location. I have it on my Tesla. You type in the location and it drives you to where you're going. Why does that matter? It doesn't matter necessarily in terms of personal commuting, but you want to bring down costs. You know, it's an amazing way to do that. Automated giant trucks driving the road, which are much safer than human driving. Like, all this is amazing, but he's got the wrong politics. Got to tear him down. Meanwhile, again, you have Donald Trump who's out there saying, you know what? We're going to make Elon the secretary of cost cutting. You tell me, which party is for entrepreneurship and innovation and which party is trying to tear it down in the name of social justice equity nonsense?
He's a great business guy, and he's a great cost cutter. You've seen that. And he said, I could cut costs without affecting anybody.
So he will be in the cabinet?
Not in the cabinet. He doesn't want to be in the cabinet. He just wants to be in charge of cost cutting. We'll have a new position, Secretary of Cost Cutting.
I mean, again, one party wishes to elevate people like Elon Musk, and one party wishes to tear them down in the name of what? Equity? In the name of proper politically correct politics? Absolutely pathetic stuff. The fact that Elon's even thinking about taking that job, man, isn't that dude busy enough? Well, listen, we all have busy schedules. I'm flying around the country for work. I'm constantly on the go. Got to keep my health at its very best. I exercise. I try to get enough sleep. I eat okay. Balance of nature fits right into my day-to-day. Imagine trying to eat 31 different fruits and veggies every day. Well, that sounds awful. With Balance of Nature fruits and veggies, there's never been a more convenient dietary supplement to ensure you get a wide variety of fruits and veggies daily. Balance of Nature takes fruits and veggies, they freeze dry them, they turn them into a powder, and then they put them into a capsule. You take your fruit and veggie capsules every day, and your body knows precisely what to do with them. It's kosher, which means I can just pop it right in that protein smoothie, which is why I'm ripped beyond all recognition. Go to balanceofnature.com, use promo code Shapiro for 35% off your first order as a preferred customer. Plus, get that free bottle of fiber and spice. That's balanceofnature.com, promo code Shapiro. Again, when it comes to eating the fruits and the veggies, very difficult to get the share that you need in every single day. Balance of Nature can help you with that. Take it off of your to-do list. Go to balanceofnature.com, use promo code Shapiro, get 35% off your very first order as a preferred customer, and you get that free bottle of fiber and spice. That's balanceofnature.com, promo code Shapiro to get started today. Joining us on the line is Lara Trump. She is, of course, the co-chair of the Republican National Committee, has been since March 2024, overseeing all the major races for Republicans in the country. Lara, thanks so much for joining the show. Really appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
So let's start with the status of the presidential race. The president is, according to virtually all the polls, running dead even with Kamala Harris. In the swing states, all the states are currently within margin of error, but the momentum seems to be with President Trump. What's your assessment of the race at this point?
Well, that's exactly right. The momentum is with Donald Trump, and there's no doubt about it. And Ben, you can feel it out there. You know, I get to travel all across the country, and I'll tell you, I posted on my Instagram the other day a beverage napkin that somebody had slipped to me on an airplane recently. I was in Michigan on Friday, and I get those constantly. And I can guarantee you that Kamala Harris's team is not getting those sorts of things. These are literally messages written from people across this country saying, "We love your father-in-law. Thank you for his fight. We're behind him. We're supporting him." That sort of stuff is organic, and you cannot manufacture that. And I think the thing with Kamala Harris is that her entire run as the Democrats' nominee for the short-lived time that it's been happening has all been just that. It's been manufactured. There has not been anything authentic about her. They came right out of the gate, tried to prop her up, put all the money behind her, get the mainstream media behind her. And people initially were like, oh, let me take a look at this. And then when they realized there's absolutely nothing there, she cannot explain or articulate a single policy point at all. She just talks in circles and the word salads. They have all come back and said, well, wait a minute. I remember how great my life was with Donald Trump in the White House. We had 4 years of that. I remember we had a secure southern border. I remember our good economy. I remember that jobs were actually plentiful and people had jobs in this country. That, you know, there were no new wars around the world with Donald Trump in the White House. In fact, we had peace agreements in the Middle East, and they have hearkened back to that time. And they've said, all right, I can't afford my life with Kamala Harris in the White House. And I obviously can see what that has led to, because everything is a disaster in America. They want to get back to the days of Donald Trump in the White House. And when you look at the polling specifically, Ben, what it tells us, the fact that it is within 1 point or 2 points between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. You go back and look at polling in 2016, this week right now between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton was up on Donald Trump by about 6 or 7 points right now. And remember how that race turned out. You go back to 2020 and they would have had you believe that Joe Biden was almost 10 points up on Donald Trump this week. And yet we remember that race came down to tens of thousands of votes really across this country. The fact that the polls have Donald Trump and Kamala Harris dead even tells me, with what I know about Donald Trump in polling, he is actually well above that. He is outperforming everything that anyone ever expected. I believe we're poised to see a blowout election, a red map on November 5th, but we're going to continue to play things like we're behind up until this game is over. That is how you're going to win this game.
So, Lara, I think the thing that many people are worried about, including me, is not President Trump's performance on the campaign trail or where he is with the American people. He has a unique capacity to draw in mid and low propensity voters that no other candidate of our lifetime has really been able to do. The thing that a lot of us are worried about is the Democrats' ground game. So the Democrats are very famous for having an excellent ground game. They obviously do things like ballot harvesting en masse. They get a huge percentage of their voting base to actually vote early. Something like 51% of all ballots in this election cycle might be cast before Election Day, and that's supposed to break heavily for Democrats. How confident are you in the Republican ground game? Can you describe what that ground game looks like, particularly in the swing states?
Yeah, so you're exactly right. We have played the game probably the wrong way on the Republican side for a long time. And the reality is, if they're going to be playing chess and we're playing checkers over here, we're never going to catch up to them. So when Michael Whatley and I took over the RNC in March of this year, we said, look, we have two jobs at the RNC. We have to get out the vote and we have to protect the ballot. And those two things really do go hand in hand. Obviously, Donald Trump inspires people, as you just said, probably unlike any presidential candidate we've ever seen in the history of this country. And he's going to continue to get out the vote. Now, we have 300 offices around this country. These are, GOP campaign offices all across the United States. We also have something called Trump Force 47. This is a way we engage our low propensity voters. That is important because we know this is going to be a turnout election. Donald Trump always says we need to make it too big to rig. We need to swamp the vote. Well, how do we do that? We engage with people, Ben, who are voters who we know lean Republican, conservative, but maybe they haven't come out the past 2, 3, 4 election cycles. We have targeted those people. We are training our group on the ground, our folks on the ground in these 300 different offices, exactly how to go out and talk to these people, exactly who they are, where they live, how to call them, how to knock on their doors, and what to say to them to make sure they turn out in this election. Now, you talk about early voting. That is something we've had a huge push from the RNC on from day one that again, Michael Whatley and I took over as chair and co-chair of the RNC. And you've also heard Donald Trump say, whether you mail in your vote, whether you vote early in person or vote on election day, those are all great ways to vote. We want you to go vote early in this election. Again, go vote early in this election and then come be part of our team. TrumpForce47.com is the website. If you want to be part of this team, we'll give you those low propensity voters. The beauty of people voting early, Ben, is that then we are not focused on getting you to turn out to vote. If you go vote early, we take you off our list. Then we focus our resources on getting those people to turn out who are really going to make the difference in this election. And if I can just couple this with election integrity as well, because I think that's also got to be something that we address right now. We can never go back and repeat the 2020 election. Everybody had major questions coming out of that. Millions of Americans said, I don't know if I can trust our electoral process. And it truly is foundational to who we are as a country to be able to trust in this process. We pledged 100,000 people that we were going to train to be poll watchers, poll workers, and legal experts on the ground starting in March. And we said, that's a lofty goal, 100,000 people to train. I'm so happy to report, Ben, we have trained over 200,000 people to do these jobs, volunteers who are going to be everywhere a vote is cast and counted in this country, because that is how we are going to ensure election integrity. We want to send a message loud and clear out there that if anyone is nefarious and has ill intentions in this election cycle and you cheat in our elections, we'll track you down and we'll prosecute you to the full extent of the law. That means you're going to jail, or if you're going to leave this country. We want to make sure people are not cheating, but we also have to make sure our people know your vote matters, your vote counts. Come out and vote in this election. Donald Trump needs you. The country, and really, Ben, the entire world needs you, because that is how important this election truly is. So we hope from that perspective, people understand the important nature of this election. We do have a great ground game. I'm very confident in it. And I think you couple that with our election integrity pursuit. And I think that this is going to be an election, again, a red map on election night. And I always say, Ben, I want to go to bed early because I'm exhausted already. I can't do the 3 a.m. Night. We're going to call it early for Donald Trump on election night.
So, Lara, obviously the RNC is also involved in a bunch of key Senate races across the country. I've personally been going out and campaigning with a bunch of these Senate candidates, Sam Brown in Nevada, last week with Bernie Moreno in Ohio, went to Eric Hovde in Wisconsin. When you look at the Senate map, there are a couple of seats that look like are easy Republican pickups. That'd be West Virginia with Jim Justice, as well as Tim Sheehy in Montana is looking very, very solid. And then there are a bunch of seats that are very much in contention. That ranges from Bernie Moreno in Ohio, who's probably up a little bit, but he's certainly in a very tight battle there. Eric Hovde in Wisconsin in a very tight battle. Dave McCormick in Pennsylvania. What do you make of the Senate map right now?
Yeah, look, I think we're in a really good position for that Senate map. We feel really confident that we're going to take the majority in the Senate this election. And I think the good news for all of these down ballot races, whether it's the Senate or whether we're talking about the House races, which are also very important in this election, because look, it's one thing to get Donald Trump in there as the 47th president, but we all know if he doesn't have a Congress that's going to work alongside of him, it's going to be hard for him to get a lot of things done except via executive order. And so we want to make sure that we have all of these covered. The great news is if you look at the polling between Donald Trump and any of these candidates, he's always polling higher than they are in their respective races. And we believe that that is going to be very impactful for all the down ballot races. He truly will help lift all of these people up, get some of these people over the finish line. And obviously he's going out and campaigning. And every time he's in one of these very important states, you see these people on stage talking to their constituents or who they want to be their constituents out there and delivering that message to people. And when you have Donald Trump at the top of the ticket, it helps all of those down ballot races. And so we're feeling very, very good, especially looking at this Senate map right now. So stay tuned, but I believe we're going to take back the Senate this election.
Well, Lara Trump, head of the RNC, really appreciate your time. Thanks for your hard work. I know you're busy, so we'll let you go, but thank you for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
You got it. Thanks a lot.
Alrighty, guys, coming up, we're going to get to probably the most shocking national security story of the last 10 years. If you're not a member, become a member. Use code Shapiro. Check out for 2 months free on all annual plans. Click that link in the description and join us.